UFC Fight Night Lewis vs. Nascimento is this week. I'm going to give you a full card prediction breakdown of all 13 fights on this card, starting with JJ Aldrich versus Veronica Hardy. What a great matchup to start off this card, but honestly, this card doesn't actually look too bad. Coming off of last week's card, hopefully you guys made some decent money. I feel like I tried to put in some decent underdogs there, and regrettably, I'm never going to say I should have picked Anthony Smith, but if you watched the video, you'd know like my worries about that fight. So I made a little bit of money on the fight. But getting into this one, JJ Aldrich versus Veronica Hardy, I'm going to go with Aldrich. Veronica Hardy is skilled. However, when I watch JJ Aldrich, she's a little bit smaller. Her losses are to Ariana Lipsky and Erin Blanchfield. Two losses that honestly aren't that bad to have at this point. When you look at Veronica Hardy, though, 4 years ago, Babe Malecki and Jillian Robertson 5 years ago. I cannot get the fight of her versus Juliana Miller out of my head. It may have just been mostly Juliana Miller, but she's honestly not that great of a fighter. She went to a split decision with Jamie Lynn Horth. At least JJ Aldrich is KOing Na Liang and beating Montana De La Rosa, who I don't think is that bad. She's got some size on her as well. I think JJ Aldrich can kind of just keep the sweat in the clinch, get the points on the feet. I'm going to pick her by decision in this one. I don't think she's going to KO Veronica Hardy at all. But Hardy has the chance here. But again, that fight against Juliana Miller was one of the worst fights I've ever seen in my entire life. Just at a skill level, again, Veronica Hardy isn't horribly skilled. Like she's got the skills and everything. But I do like JJ Aldrich. I think she's just beaten better comp. She is a little bit older, but I think she'll win this one by decision. Up the card, we have Jared Gooden versus Kevin Jousset. I'm going to go with Kevin Jousset. My only worry with Kevin Jousset fights is that he doesn't move his head off the center line. But after this last fight, it kind of cleared some things up. Kenan Song has a lot of power in his hands, and if Kenan Song wasn't able to finish Jousset, I'm not too worried about Jared Gooden finishing Jousset here. I know Jared Gooden's pretty decent, pretty underrated. Beat Wellington Turman by rear naked choke. Wellington Turman had decent moments in that fight as well, which is kind of worrying. I know he trained a lot with the Alex Pereira in their gym, but it was a little bit worrying. Lost to Carlson Harrison on short notice. I don't even think he looked that great in that fight, I'm gonna be honest. But Kevin Jousset, though, didn't get KO'd by Kenan Song, so at least when it comes to a power puncher, he's not going to get hit by those shots. I know Kenan Song's not great, but he's able to catch Ian Gary, who's pretty good defensively at this point, has fights at good range as well. But Kevin Jousset's very talented, very technical on the feet, and I do think even though Jared Gooden has a style where he's gonna stand straight up with you, he will have like a 2-inch reach advantage here, and then he's gonna dart down the middle, setting up the straight shots. I don't think that's gonna help him here. I like as much as like the explosiveness, the jumping forward, might get the foot placement and the range off for Jousset in this fight. I still think Jousset's way more technical. Again, the head movement is a little bit of a worry for me, but I do think he still wins this one. He's 31. City kickboxing as well. A pretty heavy city kickboxing card. I'll say 2 or 3 for at least just like a random fight night that isn't in Australia or anything, weirdly enough. But I'm going to go with Kevin Jousset. Probably way longer than this prediction needed to be. Probably by decision. I don't think he's going to KO Gooden, but I think he's going to stay at range and just out-technique him on the feet. Land some body kicks, calf kicks. Do his thing that city kickboxing normally pretty much does. So I'm going to go Kevin Jousset, 30-27 decision. Up the card, we have Jake Hadley versus Charles Johnson. I'm going to go with Jake Hadley. Jake Hadley actually had some really good moments in the fight against Cody Durden, and Cody Durden is an interesting fighter because he was losing a little bit early on. Like he lost to, I guess this is Jake Hadley. I'm not going to get into a full breakdown of Cody Durden's career, but he has a style where he's going to put the pressure on you. He doesn't have like a crazy amount of grappling skill. However, the pressure and the pace he does fight at with the constant wrestling does put a little bit of a wear and tear on guys at certain points. Charles Johnson, though, really good takedown defense, but even Cody Durden was able to put some work on him. Lost to Ode Osborne by split decision. Rafael Esteban even got beat up pretty badly early on against Azat Maksum, who's a pretty technical fighter. And I would say Jake Hadley, his thing is kind of like his size. Charles Johnson's actually like a pretty much bigger dude at flyweight in terms of size for what some flyweights look. I know Jake Hadley's 5'7", but I'm not going to lie, against Alan Nascimento, he's a lot shorter. So maybe it's just Alan Nascimento just being a lot bigger. But Charles Johnson is a pretty decently sized guy for flyweight. And I do think that even though Jake Hadley has I won't say a gaping hole or anything like that, but it's definitely a little bit of a hole in the grappling. I wouldn't even say grappling, but in the wrestling department. You can get taken down. I still think he can hang in there with Charles Johnson. I think he's going to be a lot better on the feet. He's going to be a lot more explosive. I think he's going to land the better shots in this fight. So I'm going to go Jake Hadley, 29-28 decision. I can see Charles Johnson kind of controlling him for maybe a round later on. But I'm going to go with Jake Hadley by decision. I haven't been super impressed by Charles Johnson in a while. 33 years of age. He's going to be, 6 years older than Jake Hadley in this fight. So I'm going to go with Jake Hadley by decision. The card, we had Trey Waters versus Billy Goff. And now this one's a very interesting one because I wasn't too sure with who to go in this. Trey Waters is a very lengthy guy. We'll have a 4.5-inch reach advantage in this matchup, which is a little bit concerning for Billy Goff. And Trey Waters, although like in his last fight, I guess he had his real UFC debut against Josh Quinlan, who's a pretty good boxer, very similar to Billy Goff boxing-wise, pretty heavy in the boxing with a pretty high guard. So it's pretty tough for Waters to land on him early, but was able to land on Quinlan a lot better later on in that fight with a little bit more combos. And that was my worry when watching the fight because Billy Goff, the thing is when I was watching him fight, and his last fight was 8 months ago against Yusaku Kinoshita, who's all right, he isn't too great. My worry watching Goff was that he's moving his head way too much. But the thing with Goff is what I started to notice, especially in a crowded arena. I think this one will be definitely very interesting. He needs to get going. He needs to land some punches, and then he kind of everything feels natural to him when he is fighting. Maybe this could go horribly wrong, and he just gets flatlined by Trey Waters here. But everything feels natural in the boxing department. He moves his head. It may just be too much, and maybe he gets headbutted in this fight and gets hurt pretty badly. But he moves his head a lot, and it seems like defensively he's pretty good when he gets kind of, I don't want to call it a flow state because it's a little bit weird to say, but it's once he starts going, it's all natural for him. And I am kind of worried about the Trey Waters style of tapping and getting out of range and just doing one shot, circling around. With Billy Goff's pressure, is going to be a little bit of a worry. Trey Waters is definitely going to have to throw a lot more in this fight. And Billy Goff is going to be moving his head quite a bit. So he needs to just be able to land on, or Trey Waters is just going to be able to land on Billy Goff in this one. Billy Goff can go to the body. Did he win? Yeah, he won against Yusaku Kinoshita from a body punch. And Trey Waters is 6'5" compared to 5'10" Billy Goff. That body's definitely going to be way open for Billy Goff. It's just more if he's going to be able to get into boxing range with Trey Waters here, at least in his range. So I'm going to go with Billy Goff. I think he can tough his way through this one. Weirdly enough, I could be super wrong here. I know Trey Waters, didn't he he lost to Gabriel Bonfim on the Contender Series. What fight is this weight at? I feel like Billy Goff's super really small. I guess it is 170, huh? We'll see how this one goes. This is a big fight for both of them. I want to see how Billy Goff does, especially if he's able to get going a little bit early on. I think he can definitely start cook in the later rounds. But he's 25, almost 26, still pretty young. So maybe Trey Waters might be the pick here just based on the youth of Goff and what he can do maybe later on in his career. But I'm going to go with Goff here. I don't think he KOs Trey Waters. The thing is with Gabriel Bonfim kind of just went straight at him, and that's kind of Gabriel Bonfim's thing is he's going to put that pressure on you to just do a bunch of crazy shit. Hopefully you make a mistake and he'll be able to submit you or KO you. Billy Goff has a very pressure-heavy style, so I think he's going to be able to get Trey Waters here, tag up the body a little bit more, and win a decision here. I don't think he's going to TKO Trey Waters at all to the body or anything like that. I'm looking at a 29-28 decision. I think Trey Waters maybe lands a little bit better early on, but I think Billy Goff just going to the body is going to tire out Trey Waters a little bit more, in the style of circling around, landing a couple shots is not really going to help him, and Billy Goff's head movement is going to win him this fight. And I know, what's Billy Goff's KO TKO records? 4 wins TKO in the first, 3 TKOs in the second. So maybe, I don't know, he has 2 decisions on his record, lost by KO one time and lost by a unanimous decision one time, and that was very early on in his career. So maybe he does get the finish here, just based on how his last few fights have gone. Round 1, round 2, round 1, round 1. So he's been able to find the finish. It'll definitely be interesting to see how this fight goes. I'm gonna go with Billy Goff, 29-28 decision. Up the card we have Tabatha Ricci versus Tecia Torres, or I think it's supposed to be Pennington. Maybe they didn't change it or whatever. They'll probably change it after this fight, but Tecia Torres, it sounds a little bit better anyways. It makes a little more sense. I'm going to go with Tabatha Ricci. Tecia Torres last spot 2 years ago against Mackenzie Dern. Probably should have won that fight. Went to a split decision. And I would say if this is an active Tecia Torres, I think she probably beats Tabatha Ricci. Tabatha Ricci is still a little iffy on the feet. She's pretty talented on the ground, but Tecia Torres was able to do pretty well against Mackenzie Dern on the ground. Again, I think a more active Tecia Torres probably wins this fight, but 2 years off, had a kid. I saw her Instagram. She's absolutely shredded right now, so she's in great shape. So maybe I could be completely wrong here, and maybe she starts cooking in like the 2nd or 3rd round after she gets some of the rustiness off. But I don't know. Her wife is a UFC champion now, 34 years of age, almost 35 for Tecia Torres. I don't know how much she thinks she has left, which would be very interesting. 29 years of age for Tabatha Ricci here, still kind of grinding a little bit more. I don't know what Tecia Torres' mental approach is coming to this fight. 2 years off. Maybe she's looking for like one last fight and then retiring and taking care of the kid or whatever, while Pennington's kind of raking in the dough of I don't know if women's fighters get pay-per-view points or anything like that. I don't know how that stuff works with some of the female divisions, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. Tecia Torres coming back. I'm going to go with Tabatha Ricci. I never trust a fighter coming off of a 2-year layoff, especially with her having a kid. We'll see how she does, but she does look in incredible shape. So maybe she absolutely destroys Tabatha Ricci in this fight. But I'm going to go Ricci 29-28 decision for this one. The card we have Terrance McKinney versus Esteban Ribovics. Here's the thing with this one. I think we're looking at a pretty good live bet here. If you're not comfortable with the plus 160 or minus 190, I think you can look at it this way. Terrance McKinney, I will say, he has been pretty pressure heavy. However, he is looking at like a decent approach. Like he starts a little bit more calmer. His thing used to be, I'm going to rush at you. He's a good wrestler. He's a good grappler. He's got a lot of power. I think he can KO Esteban Ribovics early. So that's my pick here. I'm going to go Terrance McKinney by KO, probably by submission. I think he probably drops Ribovics and takes him down and then hops on his back and submits him rear naked choke style. However, if this fight gets out of the first round, where Terrance McKinney's probably going to do a lot better, I think Esteban Ribovics has more dog in him. That's what I'll say. I think Terrance McKinney can gas out in this fight, or at least get a little bit tired, and we can see Ribovics kind of just bite down on the mouthpiece a little bit more, just start tagging up McKinney, because Ribovics is really good on the feet. I think he has a more scrappy style, which I think would benefit him in a longer fight, and if this goes to the 2nd or 3rd round. That's what I will say. And his takedown defense is decent. Like I will say against Log Ruziboev, I think that was in both of their debuts. I think it was both on short notice as well. He's able to get out from under Ruziboev, who's a pretty heavy wrestler. I know Ruziboev's not too crazy good, but he's decent. He was able to get out from under him. He's a smaller guy as well. He has decent get-up abilities from being on the ground. So there's that from Ribovics. I know his fight with Quamela Kirk was a little bit more competitive than you wanted to see against a guy at Kirk's status, but Kirk's a pretty shredded dude, I would say, if I'm remembering correctly. But yeah, Kirk is a decent fighter. I mean, he's not great, but he's not at Terrance McKinney's level. But again, I'm going Terrance McKinney first round finish. However, if this goes out of the first round, I'm going Ribovics. I'm not gonna like change my pick midway, but I will say like betting wise, I would be looking at Ribovics because I think McKinney's gonna have a very good first round. So Ribovics, if this fight goes to 2nd or 3rd round, I wouldn't mind putting a little bit of money on him, especially if the odds change a little bit more with McKinney probably being the more dominant fighter in that first round. I think the odds are going to be a little bit more even coming fight day, plus 160 odds, minus 190 odds for Ribovics, especially with the crowd. I can see the odds kind of evening out if McKinney's an underdog. I don't know what the odds are right now. These are Tapology odds, so they look at them at like the beginning of the week. But I'm going McKinney first round finish. However, be aware of the live bet for this one. Up the card, we have Chase Hooper versus Viacheslav Borshchev. I'm going Viacheslav Borshchev. I know Chase Hooper won the Battle of Low T against Jordan Levitt. Very weird fight. Very interesting one for sure. Beat Nick Fuhr as well, who's a horrible fighter, not that good at all. You would say Chase Hooper has had a couple decent matchups back to back, has looked decent on the feet recently. However, Borshchev is very good. His last fight against Nascimento kind of showed the advancement in his takedown defense. Looked pretty good against Mahashate as well, won by KO there. But it was a pretty nice boxing match against Nazim Sadikov. Borshchev, again, just very talented on the feet. Kind of had like a very unlucky go against Mark Dekaji, who's a wrestler, and that's where you saw Borshchev's takedown defense just not being very good. Same thing that you saw on the Contender Series, I believe, against Chris Duncan is what I want to say. Yeah, Chris Duncan ended up KOing him, but you saw the hole in his takedown defense. Fought Mike Davis right after. Like, UFC was not giving him good chances here to win. Took about, 7 or 8 months off, beat Mahashate by KO, and defended the takedowns against Nazim Sadikov actually pretty well. Went to a draw in that fight, but Nazim Sadikov trains with Murad, trains with Aljamain Sterling, so he's training with very good wrestlers and grapplers. He's able to stuff those takedowns. I think he can do the same thing with Chase Hooper here, and I think he's going to be a lot better on the feet. I think we're looking at like a second round TKO for Borshchev in this fight. 64% of people on Tapology are taking Viacheslav Borshchev by KO. I will do the same. I think Chase Hooper, although is getting better, he's still 24, still super young, will weirdly have a 5-inch reach advantage here. I know he's a little bit lengthier of a fighter, but I don't think he's going to be better than Borshchev on the feet here. And maybe Borshchev's going to be too worried about the takedowns and the length if Chase Hooper is just going to tag him up or whatever. We might see Borshchev get like KO'd by Chase Hooper, which would be like super weird. But no, Borshchev's going to tag him up on the feet. I think he's going to defend the takedowns. I think he's going to win this fight by TKO in the second round. Up the card, we have Waldo Cortes-Acosta versus Robelis Despaigne. I'm going to go with Robelis Despaigne. I mean, he has a 9-inch reach advantage over Waldo Cortes-Acosta. Cortes-Acosta is just going to be a little bit better than Josh Parisian here. I don't think the fight ends, within seconds? What was it, like 20 seconds, 30 seconds? Was the 18 seconds. Okay, 4 seconds before then, 3 seconds before then, 12 seconds before then. Absolutely insane, but I'm going to Spain. Just way too much range on him, way too much power. I think he's a Taekwondo champion or whatever it was. So he's got that there. After his last fight, I think that's why the odds are a little bit slimmer, short. I think a lot of people will probably be putting money on Despaigne, but Cortes-Acosta can definitely have a little bit upset potential here. Maybe he gets it out of the first round and doesn't end up getting caught, because Cortes-Acosta is like a decent fighter, I will say, but I think the range is just way too much for Despaigne, just way too big for this division. The power is just going to be a little bit too much. I think we're looking at a late first round TKO here, but we'll see how this one goes. Cortes-Acosta is not Josh Parisian at this point, and he's not super fat, so I think he'll at least have a chance. However, he went to a decision with Andrei Arlovski, and Andrei Arlovski has been getting KO'd by air, so whatever that says is pretty much what it is. Lost to Marcos Rogério de Lima as well. I think Robelis Despaigne was this one, probably by TK on the first. Up the card to the main card, we have Alex Caceres versus Sean Woodson. I'm going to go with Sean Woodson. I think his last fight against Charles Jourdain was actually one of his better performances, I will say. I mean, you kind of just figured Sean Woodson was just a weirdly built fighter at the end of the day, and he was just kind of doing his thing. But he actually looked a lot better in his last fight, I will say. He made his Contender Series debut against McKinney, beat McKinney by flying knee, which is crazy. Beat Kyle Bochniak, lost to Julian Erosa, which is a sucky loss to kind of have. Yusuf Zalal, Colin Anglin. Weird fight against Luis Saldana. I'm not going to get into it, but it's just a very crazy fight for sure. I went to a draw there. Dennis Bazooka, again, had a good performance against Charles Jourdain. Thing with Alex Caceres is that he's a kicker, and I think Sean Woodson, who's very weirdly built. I mean, these guys, well, he will have a 4.5-inch reach is what I'll say here. Has very even longer legs. Like, if you think his arms are freakishly long, his torso compared to his legs are just I mean, they're just completely different. Like Mike Wazowski kind of build here. And I think he's just going to be too long for Caceres. His boxing looks pretty good. If he was able to tag up Jourdain, who wasn't able to get inside, I don't think Caceres is going to be able to do the same here. I think we'll be looking at Sean Woodson going forward. And I think he's going to be able to tag up Caceres. And he's a little bit younger too. Caceres is looking at 36. Sean Woodson's looking at 32. So he's entering his prime here. We've seen his best performance recently. I think we'll go Sean Woodson by decision. Up the card, we have Diego Ferreira versus Mateusz Rebecki. Rebecki is very good. He has very good forward pressure, can grapple, can wrestle, has good power as well. He's a very stocky guy as well. He's going to be shorter than Diego Ferreira, very interestingly enough. But Ferreira actually has pretty good grappling, so it'll be definitely very interesting to see if Rebecki starts to wrestle here. But I think the forward pressure, especially with Diego Ferreira's power, is just something to look at here. But I do think Mateusz Rebecki is going to end up winning this one, possibly by TKO. At the end of the day, Mateusz Gamrot, who I do think is not as good, and it was a different circumstance. I will get into that in a second, but Mateusz Gamrot was able to take him down at certain points. Ferreira did really good off his back, so maybe Rebecki kind of just needs to be careful there. He is a shorter guy, and a more stocky guy, so maybe he's going to be able to evade some of those things better than Mateusz Gamrot. And at the end of the day, Ferreira is almost 40 years of age, but Gamrot was doing decent on the feet against Ferreira, who I think Rebecki might be able to go hand in hand with Mateusz Gamrot on the feet in there, and Gamrot was just way bigger than Ferreira, but Gamrot was able to take him down, put him up against the fence, and kind of kneed him to the body. That's why he got the TKO here. Maybe Mateusz Rebecki can kind of take him down, just wear on him a little bit more, kind of mixing the takedowns against a 40-year-old guy, and tire him out over this fight and win in the second or third round by TKO. However, I do think the power from Rebecki is pretty real here. Split decision with Beneil Dariush, 3 years ago for Ferreira. Gregor Gillespie lost by KO. He's losing to these next level kind of guys. And if you do kind of just look at Diego Ferreira's career, especially recently, beat Anthony Pettis, beat all these guys, lost to Dustin Poirier, Beneil Dariush. This is a pretty decent record. He's lost to Beneil Dariush again, lost to Gregor Gillespie, Mateusz Gamrot, so he's not losing to slouches. So this will be a pretty decent test for Rebecki, even though he is 40 years old here. I do think Rebecki is going to put on the pressure, land some really good shots, and mix in the takedowns. I think that'll eventually get him to win. I think maybe a late round TKO. I can also see this one kind of going to decision as well. I just don't think Diego Ferreira is going to flatline or hurt Rebecki too badly here, because I think he's going to be on his back foot for most of the part here. So I'm going Rebecki. I think he's going to tear up the legs of Ferreira. I think he's going to... Whoa. He's also at an 8-inch reach disadvantage. So, yeah, he's going to keep going forward here. I just don't think a Ferreira who's 40 years of age is going to be able to catch Rebecki. This isn't Michael Johnson. Rebecki's not going to fall backwards, flatline, stiff as a rock, and get KO that way. So I'm going to go Rebecki, forward pressure, put Ferreira on his back foot. Is way too old as well. I'm going Rebecki, probably by TKO in the later rounds. I think he just tags up Ferreira probably to the body and to the legs. Going to wear him down. Let's move on. The card, we have Alonzo Menifield versus Carlos Ulberg. I'm going to go Carlos Ulberg. I don't think Alonzo Menifield is crazy good. I mean, he's been on a little bit of a win streak. Went to that draw with Jimmy Crute, then beat him right after by guillotine, and then beat Dustin Jacoby. And I don't know if I want to get too much into this, but I was at this fight, and I was sitting next to Dustin Jacoby's family, and it was one of the more rougher experiences I'll probably ever have at an event. And it was pretty sad because Jacoby was doing pretty good early on, and he was just getting tagged. So you just see the family get super excited, he'll be having an impressive round, and then he just gets dropped. So it was pretty rough to watch. And I can never seem to get Dustin Jacoby fights correct anyway, so maybe I'll just start choosing the opposite, especially after what I saw last fight. I'll just choose the opposite here. Be predicting to lose so he wins or something like that. I don't know. It was pretty sad to see. But Carlos Ulberg won a very late round finish against Da Young, a very weird one as well. It was kind of like a hidden tap from Da Young. Pieced him up pretty early on, but again, you kind of expected Carlos Ulberg to finish someone like Da Young, who you think especially Carlos Ulberg. People were asking for him to fight ranked fighters, and he gets Alonzo Menifield now. So we'll see how this one ends up panning out. But I think Alonzo Menifield, very power heavy guy, very explosive. Carlos Ulberg, I think, will be sitting at a range here and just tagging up Alonzo Menifield from range. I don't know if he gets the finish. That's kind of like my only concern here, is I don't know if he gets the finish, especially after his last fight. Maybe Carlos Ulberg will just be way too technical for Alonzo Menifield in this fight. But again, Ulberg, a guy you expect to be doing really well in the top 15 of light heavyweight, is barely finishing Donald Young. And I know he dropped him early on and ended up getting the rear naked choke. But I feel like he probably should have won a little bit better than how he did, weirdly enough. Beat Ihor Potieria by KO, Nikolai Gumrianu, Tafon and Shukwi. So he's been running through these guys, but the last fight took a little bit more to finish. And he's 33 as well. He's getting a little bit older, 36 years of age for Alonzo Menifield. I think Carlos Ulberg's just going to be sitting at range here, tagging up Alonzo Menifield. And I do think if he does win by KO, probably be in the second or third round. I don't think he wins this one early. I think Alonzo Menifield's probably just going to come at him swinging. he comes from the Pat Barry camp, so it's not like it's not a bunch of smart people there. I mean, unless he's training with Gaethje's coach or whatever, but he's training with Pat Barry. He's not going to be. He doesn't have an insane IQ or anything like that. Like, Carlos Ulberg's just going to stand at range and tag him up here. And I think this fight will probably end in the second or third round by TKO. Carlos Ulberg is really that guy. However, I can see this one going to decision as well. So, if anything, if it is a finish, second or third round TKO for Ulberg. If not, I could see this one going to decision. Probably just 30-27 at the end of the day. So, let's move on. Of the card, we have Joaquin Buckley versus Nursultan Ruziboev. I'm going Nursultan Ruziboev. I know Joaquin Buckley really wanted a fight on this card. It was kind of short notice as well, so we'll see. I know Ruziboev's a pretty big dude. I wouldn't say he's like Hamzat size, but for 170, it could definitely be pretty interesting to see what the weight cut looks like. He won his last fight against Cedric Dumas by eye poking him and then finishing him off. He walked, so Chris Weidman could run on that card. Let's make that clear. But Ruziboev is actually pretty decent. I picked Bruno Ferreira to beat him, and he ended up finishing Bruno Ferreira and putting him out cold pretty badly. So Joaquin Buckley is pretty wild. However, it's a lot of hooks. It's a lot of like really weird stuff, and maybe that can do good for him early on. However, I think the very quick, the very explosive Nursultan Ruziboev, who found something pretty early on. Cedric Dumas hit the uppercut, was constantly looking for it, and was hurting Cedric Dumas in that fight. And then the 1-2, pretty quick as well. That got Bruno Ferreira kind of just lunged forward and landed it. I think you can do the same thing to Joaquin Buckley. He beat Vicente Luque, which was pretty rough. I mean, I was super surprised. Luque kind of just threw the fight there, weirdly enough, just pulled guard and allowed Buckley to just TKO him in that position. But I'm going to go Nursultan Ruziboev. I think down the middle is where he's going to be able to beat up Joaquin Buckley. I will be surprised again. I mean, Joaquin Buckley has some momentum, so who knows at this point. I might just put money on it because weird things happen in MMA, and he has some momentum. It is in front of a crowd, so we'll see. But I just think Ruziboev is just way too long, way too tall. I think he's going to be able to tag up Joaquin Buckley, hit him right down the middle, and it'd be a little bit too fast for him, especially if Joaquin Buckley's going to do a bunch of crazy shit. So I'm going to go Nursultan Ruziboev by KO in the second round. I think Buckley's kind of just going to be chasing after him, probably loading up, and then you'll just see Ruziboev bow, drop Buckley, and then finish him up on the ground. Maybe eye poke him at some point, and that'll be a little bit of the excuse, or whatever it is. They're both 30. They're both pretty young. I'm going to take Nursultan Ruziboev by KO. Up the card, we have Derrick Lewis versus Rodrigo Nascimento. I'm going Derrick Lewis, Rodrigo Nascimento. I know Derrick Lewis's record is kind of iffy, and I really did enjoy his last fight against Jailton Almeida, even though it was extremely boring. It was like it was weird because I've become accustomed to Derrick Lewis kind of just, it feels like he wasn't trying, and then right when his contract was up, he lands a crazy flying knee on Marcos Rogério de Lima, gets the crazy first round finish. And then he comes in on short notice against Jailton Almeida. I think this one in Brazil. Where was this one at? Oh fuck! I clicked the wrong. Was this one in Brazil? Yeah, it goes all the way to Brazil on short notice. And it's just the look on his face when he's defending the grappling from Jailton Almeida. He's just on his back, like hand fighting with him. And there's a couple moments that he had, but yeah, it was a very weird fight. I mean, he just got completely out grappled. Wasn't even really training too much before then. But Rodrigo Nascimento, at the end of the day, he got KO'd by Cortes-Acosta, like pretty early on as well. If you're telling me Derrick Lewis can't rush forward and KO him with the hook, I don't know what to tell you about it at this point. 39 years of age. I know Derrick Lewis is getting older. However, the power's not really going. It's heavyweight. That's what it feels like. One of the last things are to go at heavyweight. So he hasn't been in his 40s yet. So I'm going Derrick Lewis by KO. Dontel Mays, I guess he beat him by decision. Mays isn't looking too bad these days. I didn't mean that to rhyme, but beat Bordeaux by KO. I guess didn't that one not count? Didn't he test positive for something? But yeah, there's a no contest against Bordeaux. Beat Tanner Boser split decision. Ewer Latifi split decision. Like, these aren't great performances. Dontel Mays by decision. Derrick Lewis is going to KO him. It's in an arena as well. First round KO. Derrick Lewis is probably going to get the bonus. That's my picks for this card. Actually, looking at this entire card, it may seem like some of the picks are pretty straightforward in my mind, but this is a pretty fun card, I will say. Although it is like a little bit lower level, just outside of the main card, you see Despaigne. You know that fight's probably going to be crazy. Borshchev versus Hooper, you know that fight's going to be crazy. Ribovics versus McKinney is going to be crazy. I don't know what this one's going to look like. We'll see. Billy Goff versus Trey Waters is going to be crazy because you know Billy Goff's going to go forward. Jake Hadley, good prospect, or at least was. We'll see if he can rebound. Jared Gooden versus Kevin Jousset. We'll see what Jousset can do in this fight. Looks pretty good as well. So I'm at least interested. There's some prospects. There's going to be some fun fights on this card as well, especially the main card looks pretty nice as well. Caceres, Woodson. It's going to, weirdly enough, is not going to be as exciting as the rest of the main card. Ferreira versus Rebecca. Rebecca goes forward a lot. We'll see. Olberg, pretty good prospect at light heavyweight. Manyfield's just crazy on the feet. Joaquin, Buckley, Ruziboev, you know something crazy is going to happen there. And Derrick Lewis, you know there's probably going to be a finish. So that's what my picks are for this card. Let me know what you guys have down below in the comments. I'll see you.